What is up, Nerf Nation? I'm Naptown Nerf, and today we're going to take a look at the Swordfish, do a mod guide for it, and some fixes on how to get an OFP Serenity cage to fit. And we'll go ahead and pull some stuff out here and take a look at this cage first. Now, this has already been wired up, and I usually put a connector on there. This is a Dean's connector. So then I can remove the cage if I want to do maintenance or swap out cages and whatnot. You don't have to do this, but that's what I choose to do. And it's kind of nice because it just will sit right in here and fit right up in there. Maybe make them a little longer than I did, but this was meant to go in a stripe beforehand, so this is slightly different. Now, obviously, wiring this up is going to be pretty much identical to a Stryfe. So if you know how to wire a Stryfe, then you probably don't need to know how to wire this up, but I will show you guys how to wire this up for Lipo, or if you want to keep the stock battery tray and use IMRs, I'll show you how to do that too. So we will go ahead and try to get this to fit in here. Now, I've already removed one not boss, but support piece here, and I've just carved that away because this is a metal cage, so I don't really want to remove material from this if I don't have to. Now, if it's a 3D printed cage that you're trying to fit in here, I would probably go with maybe removing material from the 3D printed piece over the shell, but in this circumstance, I think we would prefer removing material from the shell. And if you do it in a clean manner, you're not going to be able to really notice that it's missing. So we'll go ahead and fit this in here. I think I have a pretty good fit on this side of the shell already since I've removed that piece. And it seems to sit down pretty nicely there. So they have several different screw sizes. The one that you get quite a few of will go in the majority of the shell. The shorter ones, I do believe, are for the top part of the shell. So there's, I think, 5 there. And then they give you these 2 longer ones, and I'm not 100% positive where these go yet. I'm wondering if they're for locking in the switch for your rev trigger here, as it has to go through here and all the way into this. I'm not sure though. I don't want them to be too long, but that looks like it could be a possibility. They actually give you the normal length for the shell to go into to lock in your cage here, which is a little weird because they're usually a little longer than that in a normal Stryfe, but I am assuming that that will be okay. So we'll go ahead and try to lock those in. And then we will go ahead and attempt to put the other shell half on, but I do not believe it will close. And it will not, because there are supports on this side that are actually contacting. So these parts here actually hit the top here. So we are going to have to remove some material from the other side of the shell to get this to work also. It basically, this part right here needs to come down a little bit, and then this part needs to come down. Just this little piece right here. So I just use an X-Acto blade and just kind of chop that off. Go. And when you do it like that, it really isn't going to be super noticeable. So that looks like that works. I'm going to go ahead and throw a magazine in there just to make sure that everything is good. That seems to lock in there reasonably well. It's kind of hard to tell because nothing's obviously screwed together there, but that does look like it should work. The way Worker has set this up is they basically want you to screw in your switch, and to do that you need to use a small switch similar to this one. This one's from Foam Blast. It's an authentic cherry switch, and it's a 10 amp rated switch, which is not as beefy as I prefer, but this gives us really no options, so I'm going to go with this and hope that it lasts. I'm sure it will last quite a while given that it's a really high quality switch. We're going to remove this piece here, and this will go like this, I believe. It goes in like this. And then you put this back on, and then your screws go through here and through these 2 holes and into here. Now this version of the switch has very long tabs, so you're going to have to cut back at least that top one so you can still close the shell, because it's actually going to interfere with the shell here. So that's the other thing I don't really like about this placement, is it makes it really tight back in here. When you mount a bigger switch and you can mount it down here, then you have all kinds of room down here to run your wires. But this makes it very, very difficult, so we're going to have to be a bit tricky about that. So I'm going to remove just a little bit of this top one. You just need to be careful. You don't want to remove too much, so you still have something to solder to, but it should be okay. And then we'll go ahead and try to mount this temporarily, and then we'll solder our wires to it and run them back towards our flywheel cage and our battery tray. Alright, I just removed a little bit of that, and that should work now, assuming that I run the wires appropriately away from there. We will hope that that happens. Now this usually does have another one down here, but I had removed this previously to possibly use with another project and then didn't end up using this, so that's why that one's removed. But usually there will be one there, which will be your normally closed tab, but we don't need that tab when we're wiring up a Stryfe, so no worries. And this will allow you to keep your trigger lock if you want, but I prefer that not be in there. It just makes it a little smoother and operate a little better without that for me. But this, you should be able to leave that in if you want. So I do think that that's what the long screws are for, is to lock in that switch, and it does seem to do a pretty darn good job of holding it in there, so that's good. So now that we have those threaded, we can remove this and start wiring this thing up. Okay, for this project I'm going to go with blue and black wire. Now if you're using a clear Stryfe shell, then you may want to go with just white and try to keep track of what the positive lead and negative leads are. With the blue transparent, I think blue and black will look okay. You're not going to really be able to tell too much, and that kind of gives you some contrast between the two colors, so you can kind of know what's going on, and I think will be better for this guide for you guys to be able to see what wires are going where. So we will do blue and black. We'll do blue for the positive lead. So the positive lead is what goes through the switch, so it'll go from your battery tray to your switch and back from the switch to your motors, and the black wire will go from the negative terminal here straight to your motors. So that's basically the wiring diagram. Very, very simple, and that's why people like the Stryfe for a beginner mod. So we will go ahead and strip this guy and connect some leads here so we have good links from our switch. And I'm going to start with the switch because of how it's kind of set up and how tight it is in here, to make sure this is all working properly, and then go from there. Alright, so the wire that's coming from your normally open, the middle pin here, is going to run down along here and go to your motors. If you have a connector, you can cut it off where your connector is going to be. But if you're running it to the motors, then you need to basically run it all the way to where this wire is going to connect into your connector here. Basically, you just need to make sure you have enough wire to get all the way to your motor terminal, and you need to know which way your polarity is. So one side needs to be positive and one side is going to be negative. So there will be also a red dot on your motors, so you need to have them on opposite sides. So if your positive dot, if your red dot is on the right side on this side, it needs to be over here on the left side, if that makes sense, because you want your wheels going in opposite directions so it will shoot the dart out. Then you have to find out what way the motors spin, so you know which side needs to be positive and which side is going to be negative. I usually just use some alligator clips and run it off a 9-volt battery or something, so then I can figure that out. But that's something you have to figure out. We'll go ahead and put that in there, And since I put a Dean's connector on the end, I just have to run it to that. And then your lead coming from the common, if you're going to keep the battery tray, all you have to do is cut it to where it can connect into the positive terminal, which is the bottom one, and then you just solder it straight to that terminal. If you want to run it off a Lipo, which is what I plan to do, then you need to run it into the battery tray, remove these tabs, and then connect it into like an XT60 connector if that's what your Lipo needs. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that real quick. So I went ahead and already removed this middle portion of the plastic because you kind of need to clean all that out to fit a Lipo in there. And they do make an extended battery door of some sort, but I don't have that. I'm not sure if this is going to work and keep the Lipo I want to use in there or not, but I don't really want to have to cut too much of this out. But we'll go ahead and pull these out because I'm going to use it for a Lipo, and then we can run our leads into here. Alright, you guys, that's about as tight as it gets in there. It is very difficult to get a Lipo to fit without cutting up into this part, which I don't want to do because I may put in a full auto kit at some point into this, and that probably is going to need that plastic to be in there. Plus, it just doesn't look very good, especially on a transparent shell, to cut any more than you absolutely have to. I really don't like that I've had to cut as much as I have. That's why I wish they designed this differently so it would be compatible with both Lipo and a AA battery pack. That could have easily been done, but they didn't do that. There is an expanded battery door that I would recommend getting, and I may end up purchasing one in the future because shaving all that down just doesn't look very good. It's not a great look. In there isn't as bad, but you still have to do it. It's a lot of work, a lot of extra work that was unnecessary. They could have just had a open hole that would fit a Lipo, and then you could slide in a separate piece that would fit AA batteries. I mean, that's pretty simple, but they didn't do it that way. So we'll go ahead and hopefully put this in here and see how it fits. I'm going to try to use a thumb screw here. We'll see if that works. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. But yeah, I'm just having to cut all that done, and it still bulges a little bit. That's a little annoying. And this is about the smallest battery that will work with the motors that we use in this hobby. So okay, I'm going to pause for a second just to kind of walk you through where the wiring is going. So we wired up our switch. We have our normally open going all the way around into our motors, and then the common, which is the top tab, is going to our Lipo connector in the positive end of our Lipo connector. Now we have the black wire going from the negative end of our Lipo XT60 connector up through here and going back to our motors. If you are running this off the battery tray, it's very simple. Instead of connecting to the Lipo connector, the XT60 connector, you connect the red or blue or your positive lead into the positive, which is this top part, again coming from the common, and the black wire to the negative tab. Just solder it straight to the nub that was on the metal part here and run it back to your motors. And then probably heat shrink over that, obviously, and things like that. So let's go ahead and wire this up. Now, I'm wiring this again to the Dean's connector, but if you don't have a connector to unconnect, you just run this straight to your motor leads, either the positive side or the negative side, depending on which wire you're soldering. So let's go ahead and knock that out, and we should have a functioning blaster. because the trigger pull is not the best on this blaster, we're going to lubricate the crap out of it just to make it a little bit nicer, hopefully. This is just the super lube. I get this, you can get it from a lot of different places, but I got this I think from Walmart online. I'll put a link to it. If you just want a little tube, Containment Crew has some. But we're just going to put it everywhere where there is friction. Don't forget the shorter screws go on the top. Alright, we have a functioning Swordfish, which is pretty sweet. I'm excited about that. I'll be able to use this now instead of just letting the shell sit around and do nothing. And then hopefully we'll come back to this at some point and add some other things. I'm sure Worker will be coming out with more parts for this, so look forward to more stuff added onto this in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed the mod guide. I will definitely link in the description box where you can find this Lipo, because that's about the only one that's going to fit in here. I also did a mod guide on how to change out the connector on this Lipo, so that will be linked above if you're interested in checking that out. And then this cage is the Serenity OFP cage that I installed in here, so with some modifications that does work, so that's awesome. I also did a review on that, and I'll link that above if you're interested, and where you can purchase it in the description box. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash that like button, please subscribe, and as always, peace out.